I Know What You Did Last Summer is now finally in theaters, and with that, it is time for us to go into full spoilers. So that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys, is giving you my spoiler review on I Know What You Did Last Summer, talking about some of the kills and thrills, but mainly that insane twist ending that I gotta admit, it gives this movie a little bit of balls. Are they nice balls, though? It's what we're here to find out. So please, if you got around to watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, tell me what you thought about that crazy twist, your favorite moments. How do you feel this compares to the first two? Okay, so what the heck, man? I really didn't know what to expect from this movie. I'm always down to see a new slasher movie because that's my favorite subgenre in horror. But although I like the first two original movies, I never really considered them like my favorite slashers. I wasn't really even seeing fans online begging for another movie, yet they delivered one. Okay, so the movie opens up with them having to recreate the entire premise of this movie. And I do think the original I Know What You Did Last Summer has just such a great premise. Bunch of drunk kids who go out on the road, they end up hitting somebody and they just agree, hey, let's never tell anybody about this. Some of them are traumatized and cannot live a normal life. Others are just completely fine ignoring what they did. It's such a good premise, but I don't feel it's like Scream or many other horror franchises where you can rinse and repeat that formula over and over. So this time around, instead of them just being drunk and driving on the highway, which they do play on that expectation, there was like a moment they were about to hit somebody, but they don't cause an accident. They keep going. And it isn't until the character of Teddy, played by Tyreek Withers, starts to just stand in the middle of the road, acting like he's invincible, playing chicken with a car, and him fooling around like that is eventually what leads someone to swerve and fall off the cliff dying. It was slightly different enough, and at least it wasn't an exact recreation of the original, because already you have too many things that you're trying to make like the first movie, with being set on 4th of July, going down the same road. And really that's also the biggest problem, is all the characters here are just more exaggerated Gen Z versions of the characters from the original. But whatever, this time around they actually call the cops, but they decide not to stay, to get questioned by the police, drive away, and all agree, we're never talking about this again. And a year goes by. And this is where the movie really starts to try and do something I did think was unique and interesting. It just wasn't explored all that well, and that's how a traumatic event can change you. Because we follow the main character, Ava, who is now coming back a year later to the town of Southport, where after meeting a random stranger on a plane, she's hooking up with her in the women's bathroom. The trauma has affected Ava so much that now she's like really into rough stuff in the bedroom, where she's like asking to be choked, partners to go harder on her, and I was like, oh, okay. If these are the causes and effects of getting away with murder, then who am I pushing off a cliff? And it's fine if she like hooks up with a random girl on the plane, whatever. It's like just goes to show how much she's changed. It just so happens that the girl she does hook up with also has a murder podcast. And she actually took a trip to Southport to do an episode on her podcast about the murders that happened years ago. I guess that's a way to, like, you know, fill in the new audiences watching this movie, since it's a legacy sequel. It has the exact same title as the original. You need a little bit of that to fill in, although this feels very much geared towards the fans, at least until one point. And look, true crime podcasts, they exist. They're out there. They're very popular. And while I kind of wanted to like the meta thing they were doing with this girl, it just felt so exaggerated. She's even wearing a t-shirt of Helen Shivers, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character from the first movie, and she's talking about her the way a fan would. It's like, oh, she was a queen, she shouldn't have died in that first movie, she should have escaped. I just don't think that's how someone in real life would actually portray an actual murder victim, even if they're as lost as to have a murder podcast. And you know, if I'm nitpicking more, I always think it's funny when like movies have the one deadly thing that happens in a town, and like that should be the thing that defines that town forever, when it's like, every one of us, we live in a town where crazy murder and crime has happened. McDonald's still open. I could still walk to that Chick-fil-A. So it is kind of funny that she's like there in this town and going, how come nobody's depressed about the people that died here 30 years ago? Insensitive. But the reason I'm kind of fixating and focusing on her is because she was the thing that basically ruined it for me, and I figured out pretty early on in the movie who the killer was, all because of her. So very early in the movie, they're getting chased by the fishermen, and in a kind of a cool chase sequence. It happens kind of out of nowhere in daylight. You don't expect it. There's even this cool like fishing cage that comes from above and like traps a character. I don't know. I found that a slightly unique. It's not like super inventive, but I was like, oh, it's a little different. But as Ava, the main character, is stuck in the cage and she's trying to get her way out, the podcast girl is upstairs with the fishermen fighting off, going like, no, don't kill me. I'm actually a fan of you. Like, I like what you're doing. It felt more like a parody and like that moment from Scary Movie.
Please, Mr. Killer, don't kill me.
But in her struggle, she actually takes off the fisherman's mask, gets a look at them, and says, "You." That right there is how I knew who was going to be the killer. Bringing me to the insane reveal of this movie that I think is all what we want to talk about. So let's just get into it. Towards the end, after people start dying, it started to become obvious which one in the friend group was the killer. I figured they were going to do the thing that there was two killers out there, because that's just the thing a lot of these horror movies do now, is there's always two killers. The Hard Eyes movies had two killers. Scream popularized the whole two killers to throw you off the scent of who's the real one. So I figured this one was also going to do a two killer situation from the beginning. And Stevie, one of the main characters who we find out isn't really part of the main friend group, but was kind of an acquaintance in high school, and she kind of hung out with these guys, but she disconnected because she had daddy issues, got into drugs, her life had hit rock bottom, and she's now starting to repair herself, and that night she just happened to be invited to go out with them. And they do throw that heavy exposition line of dialogue right before they go talk to her. It's like, yeah, her dad's a pretty crazy guy, and I think she's sick. We should really invite her. She has all the reason to hate us if we ruin her life tonight. But Stevie doesn't have any sequences with the fisherman, and she kind of disappears for a lot of the movie, so it was pretty obvious she was one of the killers. And her motive was because the person that they killed that night was actually someone she was in love with and was helping her through her recovery process, and that being a big factor for why she wanted to ruin all these other people's lives since they just ruined hers. But she wasn't alone, because we find out the second killer and the real mastermind that kind of makes sense then why this is a legacy sequel is Freddie Prinze Jr., one of the legacy characters from the original I Know What You Did Last Summer. Okay, I knew he was going to be the killer thanks to that podcast girl. They made it so blatantly obvious in that moment because this girl has not met all the friends of this new girl, Ava. So for her to have that reaction, to see the fisherman and go, "You," it's someone that she knows and is familiar with. And we just established she's a big fan of these murders that happened 30 years ago, enough to wear the shirt of one of the victims. So she would definitely know the faces of the survivors and legacy characters. And so very early on in the movie, I was like, oh, dang. It's got to be Freddie Prinze Jr. then. I don't see how they would turn Jennifer Love Hewitt into the killer. And sure enough, he was it. Now, the backstory and things that have been happening with Ray and Julie's characters. So it seems like they were married at some point, but they got divorced. And their divorce wasn't a pretty one, to where they pretty much hate each other up until this point, where they roll their eyes at the mere mention of one another. And it's honestly whatever. I feel like they actually didn't use Julie, Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, very well in this movie. She honestly seemed like she could care less about the fisherman situation and just gave very vague advice on how to help these kids. But she's there, Sidney Prescott style, like the end of Scream 5 for the final act, to help the main girl who's fighting off Freddie Prinze Jr. Now, okay, I don't mind the idea of a legacy character being a killer. In fact, this is something that Scream fans, or at least a portion of them, have been begging for with the Scream franchise, and that always annoys me. Make Sydney the killer. Yeah, this time Sydney should be the killer. That would be a mind-blowing twist, and her mind finally snapped. Oh, I should smack you upside the head. Never in a million years will Sidney Prescott being Ghostface make sense. You have to do some really crazy creative writing for that to actually work. Because at this point, if you just do it, you're just doing it for shock value and not actual logical sense. Same thing even sometimes with Laurie Strode. Because there's a thing in the Michael Myers franchise that you can like pass on the evil from Michael. That's how evil he is, that he can corrupt you and make you a killer. It's a thing that they've played into with like his niece. We saw even the therapist that sees Michael Myers also turned evil just from years of studying him. And that's also kind of what ended up happening in Halloween Ends, right? So it's like people have always wanted, oh, Laurie Strode should go evil. She should become the villain. She takes Michael Myers' place. Again, I think it's stupid. It doesn't make sense. For I Know What You Did Last Summer, this is honestly the perfect franchise to do that with. Because go back to that original. Who is the person driving the car and who is the one that actually kills that person on the road? It was Freddie Prinze Jr. driving. This franchise isn't about innocent kids who all of a sudden are being chased by a killer. These are guilty parties who deserve to be punished. Because you kind of want these guys to survive, but you also know, hey, keeping that secret and not telling anybody what you did, that's also wrong. And I think the movie was so close to executing that brilliantly with the whole idea that trauma changes you, but they just didn't do that part well. I explained earlier, the main character, her trauma turned her into a freak in the bedroom. Like, there was even a scene where she reconnects with her ex-boyfriend and he's asking her, hey, choke me, and the guy freaks out. He goes, I don't know if I can do that. Tag me in, coach. If a lady asks you to choke her, you do the gentlemanly thing and wrap both hands around that neck and you squeeze until the life goes away. It's the gentlemanly thing to do. And they were trying to show flashes that there was like something wrong with Jennifer Love Hewitt's character of Julie, because she's sitting there in her apartment and she's just having flashbacks to everything she went through with her fisherman, but they never be vague enough or swayed you into thinking, oh, maybe she's having blackouts. Maybe she's doing part of this thing. No, not really. And same with all the other characters. They were part of the situation, and some characters did change. Like, I thought it was a nice reveal a year later that Madeline Klein's character of Danica was no longer engaged, that their love couldn't survive that terrible secret. I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. So with Freddie Prinze Jr., it wasn't just that the trauma changed him. He was also really upset because over the years, Teddy's father, who is like this real estate mogul, came in and bought up so many properties because the value had gone down from all the murders in town, flipped the city, and now it's like filled with just a bunch of mansions and rich people, which I think did honestly kill the vibe from the original. Say what you want about that first I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's not perfect, but I do like the atmosphere and setting of Southport. Like, it just gives it its own personality, and with this movie just being a bunch of rich people's houses by the beach, it didn't have that same charm. But he was partially pissed off that this real estate guy came in, swept up the town, erased the history of what happened to him and his friends. Again, I'm like, that's something that is something that I can see him being pissed at. I just don't think they put him all the way there, because then the thing that throws him over the top is just this co-worker of his that I guess he sees as a daughter got wrapped up in this mess. She confided in him, and then he was the one to be like, okay, well, this crazy thing happened to me 30 years ago. I think we could do it to them. And so that's what explains the fisherman, the notes, because it's literally the legacy character redoing what happened to him to these characters. I just don't think he had a strong enough connection with that coworker to like warrant him doing all this. I don't know, if it was me, I would have said that maybe they got divorced because he cheated on Julie's character, and it turns out Stevie is like his daughter. If his daughter was like wrapped up in this thing where a bunch of other people got her in trouble, that would be enough motive, I think, where he's like, oh yeah, I'll sacrifice everything and help you out here. Also, side note, I like Freddie Prinze Jr. I mean, he's Fred. He was great in those I Know What You Did Last Summer movies and whatnot. I felt he had a really phoned in performance. I was just not buying him. It felt like he was just reading what he had to say. And part of the reason I feel like he also came back is because they found a way to bring back his wife into the movie. Sarah Michelle Gellar does have a cameo in this film. I know that was gonna make so many fans happy. It was part of a dream sequence that Madeline Klein's character has, and it was very cheesy and kind of dumb, but I know to the people that actually love that character, that was such a hype moment for them. But that's also the problem of this movie. You lean so much in to the nostalgia, the callbacks. There's even tons of references to the second movie. There's like a character who says, why can't we just get on a boat and go to the Bahamas? And Freddie Prinze Jr. goes, for reasons I don't want to get into, you don't want to do that. Because that's how the second movie happened. And so you're so reliant on doing this fan service, pleasing the old fans, and then you think that they're just gonna like love it when you turn one of their beloved characters into the killer? No, I honestly want to love that twist because I think there is something unique there and it actually works for this specific franchise, but you just didn't execute all that. Where there's even a lot of like weird plot holes now that are created because of this, because Freddie Prinze Jr., Ray, and Stevie, the other killer, they have scenes alone together where it's only the camera watching them and they're talking like there's another killer out there, like there's somebody chasing them, like they aren't the killers doing all of this. Ray is like, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. You're gonna be safe. You're gonna be fine. And the other girl, Stevie's worried about her friends. And I'm like, y'all are alone right now. Y'all are the killer. Y'all are doing this. Who are you faking this for right now? And it's things like that that really pissed me off with Scream 6. Although I like 75% of Scream 6 for trying new things, giving Ghostface a shotgun, the New York setting, when we got to the ending and you reveal who Ghostface is, what was going on, it's stuff that doesn't make sense and was only there to trick you, the audience member. One of the killers is a person who dies early on in the movie, and you go, okay, so the police never like did an autopsy on that body. They never put that away. That body just disappears and no one's questioning how it's actually in a Ghostface costume killing people. It doesn't make sense. But the movie did it because it's like, oh, we really tricked you, huh? You thought that character was dead. And here, oh, we tricked you, didn't you? These two guys who are the killers pretending like they care to nobody else but the camera. We gotcha. But last really funny thing right before we get to the post-credit scene that's supposed to set up a sequel that I honestly don't think is going to happen because they don't want to repeat the mistakes of what they did with Helen Shivers, that's Sarah Michelle Gellar's character. They make it look like Madeline Klein's character gets stabbed and dies, thrown into the ocean, and right at the end of the movie, she actually washes up on the beach and gets to survive for the next movie. I was like, really? She took a whole hook to the stomach, thrown in the ocean, and she just got washed up on the beach. I called BS, but I just found her so funny and likable. I'm like, if they do a sequel, I want her there. That line in the movie she had where, you know that meme where they say, do you do your skincare routine the night someone dies? The answer is yes. Cracked up so hard. But then it just feels so unserious because then you have the two survivors of the movie that are just like eating french fries on the beach with all their wounds, and then they're talking about it like they just went to the mall with like, oh, and by the way, did you know Stevie's alive? She's somewhere out there. Just a really weird mess there. But that leads us into the post-credits scene that, again, is gonna please the fans and probably just confuse newcomers. And it's Brandy, the college roommate of Jennifer Love Hewitt's character from the second movie, watching the news of what just happened, and then her doorbell ringing, and Julia is there with a note that someone left her saying it's not over. And Brandy going, who we effing up now? And again, as someone who likes those first two movies, I want to be hyped by that. I want to like that and get excited, but I don't think there's much that they did in this one to let me know if they do another, oh, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I think they did what was their best highlight moment with that legacy killer reveal. Unless they somehow also resurrect Jack Black and bring him back as a killer, I don't see what you do in the second movie to gain back the trust of the fans you just betrayed with that twist, or the newcomers who walk out of this one pretty detached because it's so reliant on nostalgia. I don't think there's much of an audience for this second movie. So I honestly think this is where it ends. I know we won't be done with this franchise and will probably be rebooted sometime again. My best guess is to just start fresh and have every movie be an anthology of different kids that accidentally kill somebody with a different slasher going after them. Like, that's what this franchise should be, is every sequel should be a new accident of a different group of teens that accidentally cause the death of somebody and someone who knows that secret killing them one by one. It only works as an anthology. I don't think it works as a recurring elongated sequel story. I really love to hear from you guys. Did you like the twist? Did you think there was something there? I think everything. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.